Hello, in this video, I'll show you how to create this 3D text animation in After Effects using the Element 3D plugin. So let's begin by creating a new composition. I'm going to have a width by 1920 by 1080 with a frame rate of 30 and a duration of 10 seconds. Click OK. Then we create a new solid by right-clicking in this area, go to New, Solid, and I'm going to rename this Element. Maintain the size and click OK. Let's create another layer. This time it's going to be a text layer. So new, right click, new text. And here we're going to type our text. So I'm going to type just any text. I'm typing in Dune. And I'm using a font style called Organo. So let me highlight the entire text again and then select the font. Let's increase the font size to say 250. Click on your selection tool, click and drag it to the middle of your page, or you can go to align and do a vertical and horizontal align. Now select the element layer, and then we go to effects and presets here, and then we type and search for elements. Click and drag it onto that layer. Alternatively, you can select the layer, go to effects at the top, look for video Copilot, and select element. Now with the element layer selected, we go into custom layers. That's under the effect controls. Look for path layer 1, drop down and select our text layer. We then scroll up and click on scene setup. Now the first thing we do is to click on extrude, and that will bring out our extrusion model, which is the text. Now to our bottom right, we have options where we can make changes to our extrusion. And the first thing I'm going to do is to change the number of bevel copies from 1 to 3. Now let's drop down our extrusion model and select bevel 1. And head to our bottom left where we have some presets that come with the Element 3D plugin. So I'm going to drop down materials and go into Pro Shaders and select Plaster. And among these, I'm going to select Plaster Grunge White. Click and drag and drop it on the bevel. And then let's make the following changes. For the extrude, let's change it to something around 3.55. Yeah, I think this is okay. For the expand edges, I'll leave it at 0. And the bevel size, 0.5 is cool. And the Z offset is also 0. So this is okay. Now let's go to bevel 2. For bevel 2, I'm going to maintain the white material that comes with the default material. And I'm going to change the extrude to 1.5. And expand the edges to 1.0. So when you do that, you see it goes beyond the plaster just a little bit. And then a bevel size of 0.50 with a Z offset of 0. We can leave the bevel curve at 1 and the bevel depth at 1 as well. So that is cool. Now let's select the third bevel. And this time we go into the translucent folder. And then we look for red glow glass. Click, drag and drop. And then we apply the following changes. For the extrude, we change it to 0.25 or 0.3. We leave the expand edges at 0 and reduce the bevel size or increase the bevel size to 0.7 and add a Z offset of 4. So what does that? It makes it look as though it is hovering on top of the other extrusions. And then I'm going to enable the bevel backside. And then I'm going to scroll down and look for refraction. Here, I want this red to brighten a little bit, so click and then change the color to a brighter red and click OK. And then make sure the intensity is on 100. Now you're at liberty to use your own imagination and creativity to select different materials. Now before we finalize everything, let's still make some further changes. Select the extrusion model and let's scroll down and look for up and look for tessellation and change it from high to extreme. And select the red glass once again, and then let's look for reflectivity. Here it is. And let's change the intensity from 4% to 100. I'm going to select the plaster and see if I can get an alternative. Say this one. Click and drag it on the plaster bevel. I think the previous one is still okay for me, so I'm just going to press Ctrl and Z and then bring it back. So with this, I think we are done. So just click OK if you're satisfied with your selections. And there we have it. Make sure the text layer, the one you typed on, is not enabled, or hide it with only our element layer active. Now let's create a background for our animation. So I'm going to right click here and select new solid. Just name it background. Place it beneath the element layer. And in the effects and presets, I'm going to look for gradient ramp. Type and search for gradient ramp. Click and drag it onto the background layer. And let's go ahead and apply the following changes. For the start color, I'm going to use F1F, F0B, F1FF0B. And for the end color, let's use CC6D00. I'm going to change it from linear ramp to radial and make changes to the center of the start ramp. Click on this. And let's drag our center of the yellow down here. Reduce the size of your canvas. Click on the end ramp, and with that, we are bringing it beneath like this. Fit to stage, and then there we have our background. So now let's move into animating the text. So with our element layer selected, let's head into group 1. Look for particle look. Come down and look for multi-object. Drop down and enable multi. Click on enable. And then we have various options of how we can animate our text. So for the rotation, for instance, if I click and drag this to my right, you see that the text rotates on its x-axis. And for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm only going to focus on the random rotation, which is this, and the displacement. So I'm going to place my playhead on the 4-second mark. And for the random rotation, click on the stopwatch to create a keyframe. Bring my playhead back to 1. And for the number of rotations, I enter 6. Then I'll scroll down and look for displacement. Displacement, I need a directional one, so I select displace XYZ. I want to displace my text on the x-axis. So with my playhead at the 1-second mark, I enter 5. And click on the keyframe. Click on the stopwatch to create a keyframe. Then I move to my 4-second mark and enter 0 for displacement. I want us to add camera positioning, so I'm going to right click here and select new camera. Preset should be on 50. Click OK. And I'll press P to bring up the position. And at the 4-second mark, since I want it to be exactly where it is, I click on the stopwatch to create a keyframe and bring my playhead to the 1-second mark. And for the Z-axis of the camera, I changed the figure from 2000 minus 2600 to minus 500. And so when I scroll through my playhead, I should have something like this with the text coming together. Now for the text animation, we can make further changes to it by selecting the element layer, pressing U to bring up the keyframes. You can select or click and drag to select all the keyframes. Right click, select keyframe assistant and select easy ease. You can press F9 for short. Now with all the keyframes still selected, press on the grid graph editor and ensure that edit speed graph is enabled. So I'm going to click, let's select it again. Since I want the graph, or I want the animation to end with some speed and begin slowly, I'm going to select this point of the graph, click and drag it to my right. And I think we should do the same thing for the camera, the positioning. Keyframe assistant, easy ease. Bring up the graph and then to our right like this. So a preview should give us something like this. I'm going to tweak it a little bit. I think the rotation is too fast. So for the speed graph of the rotation and the displace, we can make changes to it by selecting the point we selected and bringing it back a bit like this, and bringing the other points. Let's ensure that we select this point and bringing this point somewhat to the center. And let's play this back once again and see. Now the last thing we need to add is the ripple effect, which occurs when the text hits the canvas or when it hits the background. Let's add a new composition and name it Ripple or Ripple Mask. And the duration, 5 seconds. Now let's create a new solid in here and name it Ripple. And go to the effects and presets and let's search for radio waves and add it to our solid. Now under the radio wave effects, let's make changes to these settings. Under the wave motion, we change the frequency to 0 and the expansion to 12 and the lifespan, let's reduce it to 4. When you come to stroke, let's change the start width to 100 and change the color from blue to white. Once again, let's go into the effects and presets and look for fast box blur. Or in other versions of After Effects, you see fast blur. Click, drag, and drop it onto your Ripple solid. And let's change the blur radius from 0 to 5. Or let's say 50. Once again, let's go into the effects and presets and add turbulence. Turbulence displace. Click, drag and drop it onto our solid. And we change the turbulent amount from 50 down to 15. And when you come to the evolution, we hold down Alt and click so that we can enter an expression. That will be time times, let's say 100. Please note that the higher the number, the faster your ripple. So when we are done with the ripple, let's go into our first composition and drag our ripple mask into our project. And I want it to begin from where the text ends. It's animation, so I'll place it somewhere here. And then add an adjustment layer. Now for the adjustment layer, we go into effects and presets and look for caustics. Drag and drop it onto the adjustment layer. And let's go ahead with these settings. So let's go under water. The water source, we change it from none to ripple mask. And we change the wave height from 0.2 or whatever figure you have there to 0.05. And let's change the smoothing to 10. And the water depth to 0.5. And the surface color or the surface opacity, let's reduce it to 0. So when I scrub through something like this, but we realize that the ripple is affecting the text as well, which shouldn't be so. So I'm going to reposition the adjustment layer just beneath the element layer. So we have something like this. I'm going to add a second ripple. So let's go into the ripple mask composition and create a duplicate. Come back to comp 1, scrub through, and let's see. So this one looks more profound. And go back again and create another duplicate. But this time around, this one is going to come or appear later in the animation. Sort of a follow through. And I'm going to work on the opacity of that one. So for that one, let's give it an opacity of 100 here. Somewhere here. Yes. And just before then, we reduce the opacity to 0. Let's go back to our comp. When I scrub through, we have the first wave. And then the second wave starting from somewhere here. So we have the first wave, the second wave. Can still make adjustments by bringing it back a bit. So let's go to preview and play back our animation. Now we realize the ripples are a bit slow, so to speed them up, let's select the ripple mask layer. Right click and let's go to time and say enable time remapping. Now we have these two keyframes that appear. We click and drag the end, the last one, somewhere just before the halfway mark. And let's play back our animation once again. So there we have our 3D text animation. I hope you liked the video. Hit the like button if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Leave a comment in the comment section and I'll do my best to respond. Until then, see you in the next video.